Hi, I'm Christine I. Kugelmann from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I wish that I could be at Computers and Writing with you because it's so much fun, but I just couldn't this year. So I decided to record my presentation so that you can watch it at your leisure. What I'm working on is a hashtag MeToo media content analysis, but at this point it is definitely a work in progress. I simply have so much data that I need to wade through, so it's going to take me quite a while. And I don't know about you, but this semester was extremely difficult for me. So let's just jump right into it. But first, let me talk about the genesis of my current project. So back in 2019, my co-panelists for this Computers and Writing conference, Alex Reister and I, took on the task of conducting a qualitative content analysis of news featuring the hashtag MeToo. So we actually wanted to focus on December 2017 only, since that's when Time released their Silence Breaker magazine. We took a look at the BBC, CNN, and Fox News articles. We found 14, 38, and 26 respectively for a total of 78 articles. And our search terms specifically were hashtag MeToo or just MeToo, since not all news sources use the hashtag sign. And they also use MeToo as 2 words. We hand-coded all of our data, which was quite an undertaking. We actually used an Excel spreadsheet, and we wanted to make sure we had intercodal reliability. So that took quite a while. Initially, we had 43 codes, which we collapsed into 5 or 6 broader umbrella codes, looking mainly for those themes, and that's what we focused on for our article. We did use a feminist and framing theories, since we were looking at media outlet news sources. The majority of these articles focused on the celebrities themselves and not on victims, and they also had no consistent definitions of terms such as what the news source considered sexual harassment. Our final recommendation in this article called for an expanded analysis, including more news sources, which is why I took on this project for Computers and Writing, and Alex and I plan on turning this data into another follow-up article. For this project, I looked specifically at BBC, CNN, Fox, CBS, and NBC. So 28, 16, 24, 11, and 22 articles respectively for a total of 101. Now that's not too far off of the 70 plus articles we had in December 2017, but the big difference is this actually covered from February 2020 all the way through until September of 2021, so about a year and a half for 101 articles. And when I searched, I did Google searches, and I also went specifically to each of these websites to try to find articles that featured MeToo 2020, MeToo 2021, or hashtag MeToo 2020, hashtag MeToo 2021. And then I also started adding in names. So R. Kelly, Biden, which was surprising to me, but when I started reading the Fox News, they brought up Biden a lot, so I decided to add Biden to the other news sources and see what I could find as well. Weinstein, Cosby, there's also of course, Cuba Gooding Jr., so there, Cuomo, many other names were popping up as well. Once I gathered up all of my data, so what I did is I created a Google Doc, and I had all of my hyperlinks to all of the news sources to make it easier when I was actually doing my research searching for these articles. And then once I had my list of articles, I went to deduce, and I actually went in and copied every single news article, not including any audio files or any video files. Of course, I had to be really careful when I was copying paragraphs to make sure I wasn't grabbing any content from underneath a picture or any pullouts or anything like that. So it was actually quite time consuming. But this is an example of how I copied it into deduce. So in the title, I always started with the news source to make sure that I could keep track of them in blocks within deduce. And then that is social media is forcing Iran to address the taboo topic of sexual violence is the actual title of the article. In the description, I put the author's name of that particular article and then of course the publication date. And then just a quick copy of all of the content from each news source. Once I had all of that in Deduce, I then started coding. So I have some broad codes as I was reading my articles, what was jumping out at me. So as you can see here on the screen, up at the top, I have my 101 different media selections. And at this point, I only had 21 codes. I actually have more now. And I had only applied about 43 to the article. So you can see I'm at the beginning stages of my deep dive. So in the codes here, references to media, several of the articles, say for example, Fox News is referencing, well, NBC did this or CNN said this, and so they're kind of analyzing the other media sources as well. So I wanted to make sure that I coded for that. Cancel culture is coming up, and of course celebrity. So when I use the term celebrity, I actually mean any public figure. So that is politics, sports, and certainly in the film and TV industry as well. And you can see some of my breakdowns already: Cuomo, Brett Kavanaugh, Clinton, Biden, Epstein, Trump, and Weinstein. And then I also wanted to take into account any variation of the hashtag MeToo. For example, here's one, hashtag MeToo era, which a lot of the news sources is calling this. There's hashtag MeToo movement, hashtag MeToo moment, which I find interesting because a moment is a split second in time. And so I want to definitely take a look at that more deeply when Alex and I do our deeper dive into this research. Several mentions of apologies, and then I'm going to add another code of lack of apology because we got to look at that flip side. Sexual assault, harassment, and rape. Some of the news articles are quite descriptive with what they mean by that, so I'm coding for that as well. Denials of anything happening, and then of course consequences of what happens after that. This is what it looks like when I actually do the codes, and so you can notice here on the screen that there are different colors which Deduce automatically applies to the line of text. And over here on the left-hand side, you can see the little icon. So this means that they are indeed coded. And this is just a little quick code here in the middle that I can just click as I move through the article. So honestly, Deduce is, if you ever want to use Deduce, it's really easy to use. I use this for my dissertation, so I highly recommend, but I just wanted you to see what it actually looks like. What I did next, because this is such preliminary research, I actually wanted to see what word clouds would look like. So what I did was I went through each news source and copied all of the text so that I had huge chunks of text. So here you see BBC, and there were 18,592 words in just those BBC articles. And so I went to a word cloud generator because I wanted to get a different perspective since I'm so early in my coding phase, just to see what words are most used in these articles. And of course, looking at this, we can kind of analyze or look at the subtext. So what I want to do ultimately is kind of couple my coding in Deduce with these word clouds to really give deeper meaning to my analysis. So of course here in the BBC, the largest word is sexual, and then next women, and others we have harassment, movement, allegations, and here you see Kelly, that's in direct reference to R. Kelly. So the BBC actually had many articles on R. Kelly, many more articles than any of the news sources that I'm looking at. Next we have CBS, and these were the fewest articles that I could find, which is interesting because there were quite a few in that previous iteration of our project back in 2019. But here again, sexual and women definitely stand out, as well as harassment and Kelly. Fox Fox News had 11,208 words, and you can see in this word cloud, which is really interesting, their focus politically. So certainly sexual and women, like the other two news sources, are quite large words, meaning that those were the most used words. But look, we also have Cuomo, we have Clinton, we have Biden, even Bill. If you can see Bill somewhat next to Biden is small because they were focused mostly on the politicians, and of course president, with Kavanaugh and Weinstein much smaller. But movement, assault, harassment are also bigger, and you can see here media. So they like to talk about other media sources, and they also reference themselves a lot as well, Fox. Here we have CNN with 16,224 words, and look at what's the biggest word, Weinstein. So CNN was quite focused on Harvey Weinstein over anything else, even the word sexual or women, which I find quite surprising. But also we have allegations, assault, years, movement, and I do want to point out also, you can see back here in the BBC, MeToo. Now, it really depends on how the news sources use the words Me Too, either together as they did in the BBC, but you can see from CBS, Fox News, and CNN that they don't push it together as one word, Me Too. So when I'm doing a word cloud, it's going to look at me separately and then too separately as well. So that kind of affects the word clouds as well. Lastly, we have NBC, 20,945 words, and here you can see women is by far the biggest word, and in fact it's the biggest iteration of the word clouds here on your screen. Sexual, assault and allegations, and then Weinstein. Now then what I wanted to do, since I already had all of the articles copied and pasted, I actually had them in different Word docs to make sure that I kept all the text together. This word cloud generator, I was super excited that it would take so much text. So what I did then was I put all of the text together for a total of 73,160 words, which is quite large. And then this is the word cloud that came up because I really wanted to see in totality what jumped out the most. So you can see here sexual and women look almost equal. And if you can look down here in the frequency chart, so women was stated 398 times, with sexual like right behind that at 396, and then Weinstein 212 was the third most used word in all of these 101 articles. So I find that a bit distressing, but we'll see once I get more deeply into the data what this actually means. And then of course allegations, 188. And new, the word new can kind of be thrown out. This could be a new case, New York, when in reference to Cuomo. Then we have assault coming in next. So what are the implications that I'm already seeing here in this data? One article, the Levinson article you see here that I've cited twice, actually is focused more on what's actually happening in terms of the legalities. So this article talked about the allowance of prior bad acts. So they're talking about when women have been assaulted by the same person. So for example, 5 different women from Weinstein's past got on the stand to talk about what happened to them. And oftentimes in trials, they'll say that that's irrelevant, that it doesn't really count for this specific trial. But what's happening with the Me Too movement is that it's got a broader impact. It's changed the American legal system to allow those multiple cases to come into the court case and it be more relevant to this particular case. I'm also seeing that these articles are highlighting power dynamics, inequality, and coercion, not just in politics, but also sports. For example, I've got a few articles on the Olympics, on wrestling, on other types of sporting events happening with athletes that are affecting these power dynamics. And also, of course, the government, which seems to be quite prevalent, especially with Cuomo. And as I said earlier in this presentation, I was surprised to see Biden's name brought up. And also, Vice President Kamala Harris has also been discussed in some of these articles in reference to some of her aides and people who are close to her as well. We're also seeing more victims are willing to come forward due to the support that they feel from maybe the media, but certainly the public. And if the American legal system is allowing for more cases, and as this next one talks about prosecutors being willing to take up the cases, really because the media is getting that news out to the public, and then the public is more receptive to such sexual assault cases, and then the prosecutors are more willing to go to trial for this. So we're kind of seeing definitely a cascade effect happening now that we did not see back in 2019 when Alex and I were working on our publication. Something else I've noticed that's much different than those cases, very little discussion of Alyssa Milano or Burke in response to the history of the Me Too movement and where it actually started, much less of that now. So I think that there's a lot of changes that have been happening over these years and these implications of the hashtag #MeToo. What I'm also noticing is that it's global. So a lot of the news articles, especially of course with the BBC, it's talking about India, talking about Korea, talking about China. So the Me Too movement is not just an American movement. This has definitely moved abroad. And so I'm excited to see where the research is going to take me, and I will hopefully report back to you or have publish an article so I can share what I find. So I've only referenced this, and thank you so much for letting me show you the research that I have so far. If you would like to get a hold of me, my email is christine.kugelmann@erau.edu. Thank you.